At Rubber Band, we empower each other through positivity, kindness, and practical advice. Join a community of thousands of peers who understand the unique challenges you face. Rubber Band. Company agnostic, low ego, high empathy, always supportive. And we are live. Welcome, listeners, to today's episode of the Rubber Band podcast, where I am joined by special guest Jason Elias for a recruitment chinwag. Now, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I live and work on, the Wadawurrung and Dja Dja Wurrung people. I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waterways. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I would like to extend this to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Welcome to the Rubber Band podcast, Jason. How you doing, mate?
Hey, very excited to be here. Happy New Year to you and all your listeners. Real privilege to be on the Rubber Band podcast.
2025. What is going on? How did that happen? It still feels like the millennium year for me. Counting down 3, 2, 1. Happy year 2000. It's gone way too quickly.
Way too quickly. I hear you.
And I feel a bit rusty. This is my first episode for 2025, and I've lost it. I'm out of it. Like we've had to do a couple of takes already. I don't know what's going on, Jason, but hopefully I'll
that would explain the vodka shots.
Maybe we need a couple of shots to get through it. But I'm really excited to catch up with you, mate. Like I've been wanting to record an episode with you for quite some time, and I firstly want to thank you for all your support in the Rubber Band community and participating in Movember and raising funds for men's health. You're an absolute champion, mate. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I've been with Movember for a number of years, probably 10 plus. And I think this year we raised just around $1,000 for such an important cause. But more importantly, I'm quite lucky to have a good social media profile. So to be able to raise awareness, I think is just as important as the funds for such a worthwhile cause in men's health.
Absolutely. And it's why I've chosen to keep my moustache. I figure advocacy, getting it out there, starting conversations, it's going to stay. I might look a bit ridiculous, but bring it on.
Yeah, well, I was threatened with divorce if it stayed past 1 December. So I had to it went on the 30th of November, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, there we go. I'm wearing a mo for both of us. How's that?
There you go. Sounds good. I'm outsourcing my mo.
Outsourcing your mo. Well, now, Jason, where are you joining us from today? Where are you based?
I'm in Sydney. Popped into the office today. We're in the middle of Pitt Street in the heart of Sydney CBD.
Oh, wow. Sydney. I'm a Sydney boy myself originally. I do miss it. I don't have a lot of opportunity to go to Sydney anymore, but I think I need to. I'm craving home soil. Just need to spend a few days up there, I think.
Just, I got to say, being able to see the fireworks over the harbour, and yesterday family popped down to Bondi Beach, it really is a lovely place to live. So I feel very blessed to be here.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of Sydney, speaking of where you live, we always start with a recruitment chinwag by going back and learning about your history and growing up and your family and where you're from and all of that kind of stuff. So are you born and bred in Sydney, or tell me
I am, yeah. I'm an eastern suburbs boy, born and bred. I still live in the eastern suburbs. But my family is, have you ever seen those dogs that are bitsers? They're bits of this and bits of that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a bitser.
I'm a bitser.
If you look at my grandparents, on my mum's side, my grandfather was from Austria. My grandmother was from Melbourne, which is a point of some contention, but anyway. And on my dad's side, my grandmother was from the Middle East and my grandfather was from Singapore. And my dad was actually born and raised in Singapore and moved to Australia in his early 20s.
Oh, wow. That is a bit.
But
I'm a bitzer, but I'm not that much of a bitzer, right? Like that's fabulous. So you grew up in the eastern suburbs. Whereabouts were you? And did you tell me about your schooling? South Coogee.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a nice part of the world. It was very mixed. So we were probably, my dad had his own business, so we'd be, sort of middle class, I guess you'd call it. And then one street away were these 5-story mansions of the ultra wealthy, and across the road from us was Housing Commission. So when we played front yard cricket, it was just like a mix of all the kids in the neighbourhood, and nobody really cared about that sort of stuff. It was just a really nice multicultural and well, I guess integrated neighbourhood.
And still is, really. Like,
Mm.
you find, and I love that part of the world, like Maroubra, Coogee, when I lived in Leichhardt as well, which was my most recent time in Sydney, but that was about 10 years ago. I love that about, the inner west, but also, the eastern coastal, that side of town, because it really is that wonderful mixed community of people from different backgrounds, and
Totally.
it's vibrant, and I love it. That's my favorite part of Sydney. So you're talking my language, mate. Now,
and hard to find bad food. There's so many great restaurants in Adelaide.
That's right. Now, growing up, so assuming you went to high school in Sydney locally, tell me about Jason when you were, a teenager. What did you think you were going to do? What were you really into?
So I was a public speaker and a debater. So law was always sort of the calling that was picked out for me. I grew up watching LA Law and Arnie Becker and those sorts of guys. So I always thought I was probably going to end up as a lawyer. The marks were really high, still very high to get into. And sure enough, I ended up being a lawyer. So I practiced law for a few years, and I went to UNSW, which was 5 minutes away from my home, and it was a great time at uni because campus was close. It was really one of those days where before the internet was around, so you'd spend all your time at the uni. So in between classes, you were socialising, and we used to hang out on the library lawn and drink coffees and just hang out with people. And it was something that I don't think my kids or this generation get to experience as much, particularly with all the online stuff. But there's a real social aspect, and I love that part.
Oh, fabulous. So while you were studying, like, did you have a casual job, or were you working in your father's business? What was your first job?
I worked very briefly for my dad, who was the first guy to import watches into Australia. So I used to go around to pharmacies with like boxes of watches and try to sell them to people, which was a real baptism of fire, but helped me with cold calling later in life. But my first real job was I ended up working with probably the best job anyone could ask for during uni. I worked with Club Med.
Oh, wow.
So for 6 years, every time there was a uni holiday, they were busier. So they'd ring me up and send me to a different resort. So I spent 6 years traveling around. Mainly, I speak French and Indonesian. So they mainly sent me to Bali, but I also ended up in Noumea, in Israel, in Mexico, and the now closed down Lindeman Island up in Queensland. So I had the best time, and I've still got some great friendships from those times. In fact, one of the people who works with me, Jasmine, her mum and I were colleagues together at the mini club at Club Med in 1992.
Wowee.
So
incredible.
It's a small world. But a double-edged sword, because 1 minute I'm at a resort going around. I was a dancer, a DJ, entertainer, kids club. And then when the real world came, I ended up working as a lawyer in what was the biggest law firm in the world. But work in a law firm was very, very different to working at Club Med. And my bubble was popped as to what work was really like.
Mm. And that brings me to the question. I mean, studying law, you're watching LA Law, you were passionate about it, it was your world, you moved into practice. Where did recruitment come about? Like, was that, how did that all happen? How did you move into our industry?
That's a great story. So, as I mentioned at Club Med, I was a people person and I knew everybody, and that was great. And I really liked people more than documents. So you said to me when I was at the law firm, tell me about Section 51AC of the Constitution. I could tell you, but I wasn't passionate. But ask me about Dorothy and her 3 kids, who's the secretary on level 4. I knew all about it. So I've always liked people more than documents. So after a few years, I wasn't really getting up on a Monday morning with that spring in my step. I had everything I'd want. I was in the biggest firm in the world. I was being paid quite well. I had the prestige and all the glamour that went around, along with, going out to dinner parties and saying, oh, yes, I'm a lawyer, that sort of
Yeah.
kudos and stuff. But it didn't float my boat. So, funnily enough, I seemed to get on well with a lot of my ex-girlfriends. And at one
Right.
particular point, I was living out at home and an ex-girlfriend lived around the corner, Katie. And Katie said, well, come over for dinner. And at that dinner, I met Katie's mum, Adrienne, who was sort of straight out of central casting, this big, larger-than-life, hilarious lady. And Adrienne ended up becoming quite friendly with me. And over the years, she'd ring me up from time to time. And she rang me up one day when I was working as a lawyer and said, I'm now working in a legal recruitment firm. What's an affidavit? So I became almost her backbone for legal jargon. And one day she must have picked that I was not particularly happy. And she said, let's grab a coffee. So we went for a coffee. She goes, you don't sound like you love what you do. I said, look, there's so many great things. I spent all these years becoming a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, how would you like to work with me? And you'd spend the rest of your life in coffee shops, chatting and helping people. And I think I was sold. Right. So I ended up working with Adrienne for a while. She ended up leaving that business. So at the tender age of 27, I hung up my own shingle. And this year, well, now that's 2025, I can say we're going to be celebrating our 25th anniversary.
Amazing. And it's those coffees. I think it happens to all of us. Like, we don't tend to seek out a career as a recruitment consultant or a talent acquisition professional. We have that coffee and something clicks. What was it when you had with Adrienne, when you had that coffee? What made you go, actually, recruitment sounds like my jam? I want to give this a crack. What was that defining moment for you?
I didn't even know there was a job getting other people jobs. So that was foreign to me. So like I have a family in recruitment. I'd never heard of recruitment before in my life. The closest I got was I did a psych test to become a lawyer, and that was at Chandler and McLeod in the old days. But the idea of just problem solving, but not with documents and legislation, but with people. So listening to somebody saying, you know what, I'm really looking for A, B, and C, and going out and actively finding them an opportunity that matches what they want. And let's face it, we spend a lot more time in the office with our colleagues than we even do with our own families. We have a joke in my office. So Carolina, who is my 2IC, we've worked together. This will be our 10th year working together. And if you eliminate time that you're asleep, I spend more time of my waking hours with Carolina than I do with my wife. So Carolina's nicknamed the work wife, and my real wife, Jackie, is the home wife. And it's quite funny because we spend that much time together. And my point is, you spend so much time in the office. So people that go to the work each day and aren't getting the most fulfillment of it, that's a problem for me. So if I could put them somewhere better, where I call it the Sunday night test, when they're going to sleep on Sunday night, they're looking forward to getting up and going to work on Monday. If I can change people's lives that way rather than redrafting a clause in a contract, that floats my boat.
And did that, when you, young Jason hitting the desk, starting out in recruitment, those first few months, did the reality meet your expectations?
Absolutely. I caned it because so I just like the ex-girlfriend scenario, I left my firm on great terms. So the first thing I did is I rang up the HR manager of my old firm, and he basically gave me the job list. And it was shooting fish in the barrel because Eden would be going to interview with Jeffrey and Jenny. And I'd say, Eden, Jeffrey's got 3 kids, Jenny's got 2 kids. They really into this, that, and the other. So my candidates were so well prepared that they'd go in and pretty much get offers on the spot. So the first 6 months was ridiculously unrealistic because it was shooting fish in a barrel. I was making placements left, right, and centre. I got a little bit cocky. I went out and bought yacht magazines to see which yacht I was going to buy. And then 2001 recession came, smacked me across the bottom and gave me a lesson in humility. So I've not been cocky as much since because it's one of those things where recruitment is champagne and razor blades. But it was, after there was a little bit of time down, but we picked back up. And I was very lucky to survive 2001 and the GFC and COVID and be here 25 years later to tell the tale.
Well, yeah, and look, happy anniversary on the business, Jason. And you know, I always find it so inspiring to hear the success stories of people that have gone out on their own and they've taken that risk and they've taken that plunge into small business. And I've done that number of times and unfortunately haven't really succeeded as you have. But, you know, I admire the fact that I've given it a crack. I mean, 25 years.
Give it a crack.
Give it a crack, right? And tell me about the business and, you know, what you specialize in and why it has been so successful and why you've had that longevity.
So I think the luck was not having come from a regimented recruitment agency. I know some of them will make you sit at a desk and between 9 and 10 you make X amount of phone calls, and between 10 and 11 you're not allowed to use the internet, and that's not me. I'm probably ADD, like many recruiters. I haven't been formally diagnosed, but I could not be that regimented. So my lesson was kind of like that cliched golden rule: treat people how you want to be treated. So I imagined myself as the lawyer that was getting the phone call. And, you know, there are many times I've pulled jobs from people who would have taken them saying, you know, I don't think it's the right match for you. Come see me another time. And it always rewards people if you play with a straight bat. So I've never sort of tried to be a cowboy or make that placement because I think I'm always in it for the long game. I've got nowhere to hide. The business is called Elias Recruitment. So, you know, the reputation is everything. And I'm very happy to say that most of the business we have is repeat business from candidates and from clients. I'm blessed to have a good team. We've about 5 years ago, there was 2 of us, Carolina and I, and now we've grown to 10 people. And I've got people across. I've got a new person starting in Melbourne next month. I've got somebody in Perth. I've got somebody in Queensland. I've got somebody in Auckland. I've got somebody in Bali, or technically Lombok, and then a big team in Sydney. We cover lawyers. So lawyers includes lawyers in law firms, in corporates, not-for-profit and Indigenous. So about 20% of our business is in that not-for-profit and Indigenous space. And we have a specialist consultant who used to be my client at one of the land councils who does a lot of that focus. So Indigenous equity is a huge point for us, which is why I really like the fact that you did the acknowledgement of country when we started. So, yeah, we're a good team. We're probably one of the largest specialist legal teams, and we do everything from the lawyers. We've got 2 people that do support staff, and we've got one other that does what we call shared services. So HR, accounts, marketing, BD, anything that a law firm might need outside of technically a lawyer.
It's incredible. I mean, it's, 25 years of history and then talking about this, you know, almost rapid booming growth over the last 5 years. Is that, and I love the work that you're doing, the purpose-driven work. And, you know, for me as, you know, a potential client, I would be really drawn to an agency that is doing that wonderful work in community as well. Why are we seeing? Why have you seen that growth recently? Has there been a change in the market? Is it, you know, I mean, legal recruitment's hard, right? I've always struggled to place legal counsel, So what's happened? Why have you seen this shift?
Hi, this is Chris Bierling, host of the People and Performance podcast. Each episode features conversations Bill Banham and I have with leaders and consultants about ways they've inspired colleagues to thrive. Past People and Performance podcast guests are from such brands as NASA, IBM, Rolls-Royce, and McKinsey & Co. You can find us on your podcast player of choice.
It's great to be an overnight success after 25 years.
Yeah.
So I would like to say it was a well thought out strategy, but once again, fell into it. So maybe 5, possibly 6 years ago, I got a random call from a lawyer who was based in regional New South Wales. And she said, this is going to be the weirdest call you get all day. And I said, oh, I get a few weird ones. Try me. And she was right. So this is a lady who's still a very good friend of mine. And she said, look, I am a lawyer, but I don't want to practice anymore. I'm really well connected in my town. And what happens is I walk down the street and someone says, hey, I'm looking for a family lawyer. Who would you recommend? And I say, oh, call Debbie. And then they hire Debbie and nothing happens to me. I might get a bottle of wine. She goes, bugger that. I want to be a recruiter. And I've done my research, and out of all the recruiters, bar none, everyone said you're a decent bloke. So what I want to do is pitch to you an idea. I don't want a salary because I want flexibility. I want to be able to do some lawyer work. I want to be able to teach. I want to work in a frock shop. But if you have stuff, feed it to me and give me a slice. So I said, sure. So we worked out a ratio of 40-60. Right. So anything I fed to her, she placed the job in her town or beyond that. She did overflow work from Sydney, and she would get 40%. Then about 2 months in, something unexpected happened, and that is she brought in her own clients, and she would do the client and the candidate side. And she rang me up and said, hey, here's my invoice for the 40%. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pay you the 40%. She goes, Jason, I was told you're a good guy. Don't cheat me now. This is really dishonest of you. I can't believe that you would scam me like this. I said, oh, because I was going to say I'm going to give you 60% because you brought in the client. And she goes, oh, okay, I'll take that back. So we created a new relationship, which was basically whoever brought in the job got the 60%. And that's now carried on to now I have 4 other people on that model, and a lot of them work remotely, and others of them have other jobs and other interests. So they can work what they want, when they want, how they want. The only condition is if I ring up and I say, hey, Eden, I've got this job. Can you take it on? And you say yes, that you look after the clients and the candidates. So you can say no to any job at any time. You're not required to do any BD. But what you do is if you want, I'll ring up. We have a meeting each Tuesday, say who's got capacity, and people can pick and choose the jobs they want to work on, and they get a slice of it. And that's allowed me to grow quickly.
Well, this is future of work, right? And it's, where organizations are looking at different ways of working and having that flexible approach and looking at outcome-driven work rather than time at desk. And that's a testament to that it's working.
COVID didn't affect us in terms of our workflow because nothing changed because people worked remotely when they wanted to, and we just flicked a switch. So we're interviewing candidates on Zoom. My people were remote. They didn't need to come to the office. I tended to come in the office a little bit because it's a quiet space to work, and I have 3 kids who are fighting over bandwidth at home with homeschooling and whatever. But at the end of the day, we were prepared because we were lucky enough, and I'm not saying it's strategic, I'm saying it was more coincidence, that we were already working remotely before we needed to work remotely. And now most of my team are either remote or part-time. In fact, nobody works 5 days in the office, including myself. On Friday, I don't come into the office anymore, and I mainly do strategic thinking about the business or catching up with people or networking. But if you know me, I'm a bit of a workaholic. It's now the 2nd of January and I'm sitting in my office. But it's nice to have that break, and I don't think the genie is going back in the bottle. And I've said to employers that are now demanding lawyers working 5 days a week from the office that their talent pool will be a fraction of what they would if they have the flexibility. And moreover, they're setting themselves up for their talent to be poached by other clients who are more I guess a lot of people are going back if they have to resist reluctantly, and they will get calls eventually that will allow them flexibility, and I fear they will move.
And then there's the flip side of it. I think this is all about choice. And you talk about you like being in the office to, escape the chaos that can be happening at home. And I agree with that as well. I mean, I've been 20 years with another recruiter, right? It drives me nuts half the time with the noise that he's making on the phone in the other room. So I like to go into the office. But
it shouldn't be mandated is the right point. It's got to be chosen. And if you start mandating in what is still a candidate short market, you're going to lose the existing people. and you're not going to attract the best talent. I'm not saying you won't find people, but there would have been other people to find that may be better.
Yeah, no mandates either way. Because what we're seeing this creep where people are mandating that you do have to work from home a couple of days a week and set an example and all of this. And I think that's counter, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Agree.
What I'm saying.
Who likes to be told what to do?
That's right.
And, I've got to say, there are benefits to being in the office. So I've got the hot desk is just outside there. I've got people that will sit out from there on the 13th of January when we're back in town. And it's great. With Carolina and I, we'll just chat to each other like that. And that's a lot different to me having to ring up. I mean, she only works in the office for 3 days, but I wouldn't disturb her on the 2 other days because there's now that right to disconnect, which is a whole other topic. But, if I'm looking at the quality of lawyers, some of the feedback I've had is that the lawyers that were trained maybe 5 years ago that were in the office full time may be better than the lawyers that work part-time from home, because they're not the argument. This is only what clients are telling me. The argument is that they learn a lot by osmosis and by being around other people and sticking their heads in other people's offices and asking queries. So that's one point. There may be some truth to it. I'm not sure. The other thing is culture. A lot of people say that culture is easy to have when there are people in the office. So I think the solution is compromise. So firstly, it's choice, and maybe having an anchor day so you can have those meetings or cultural things all done. But really, the future of work is not 5 days in an office. I think that's long gone.
It's really interesting. It continues to evolve and grow. I mean, we're seeing the introduction of 4-day work weeks that, trials are very successful. At Movember, we're a 4.5. We do 4.5 days, but we're paid for 5. So we're seeing more of these. I think chief people officers and CEOs being experimental with future of work. And I really like that, because I don't think we know the answers, because it just is evolving constantly.
Well, I agree. But in speaking to a lot of lawyers, and they tend to be more female lawyers that maybe through whatever it is, tradition or culture, whatever, end up bearing the brunt of family responsibilities, either for children or for elderly parents. A lot of them move to 4 days and end up working the equivalent of 5 days, but only being paid for the 4. And there's a lot of leakage into that 5th day. So it'll be an interesting thing to see how that goes forward, because I think there's a lot of inequity in that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, this is being paid. What I'm talking about is being paid for 5 and working 4 rather than a point 8. You're absolutely right. I mean, there are a lot of arguments in terms of flexibility where it is introducing inequality. And so it's just a minefield, and I think it's a fascinating thing to watch. I don't think it's ever going to stand still. I think it's going to evolve. It may flex the other way. It may flex one other way. We just don't know.
But
it's a fascinating
in an industry
space.
like recruitment, the outcomes are really easy to measure, because you can look at, on the agency side, you look at the number of placements, you look at the revenue, you look at the stick rates that people stay beyond guarantee. And we do testing on satisfaction on both client and candidate side. So as long as those metrics are all sort of good, then who really cares if you left at 3:00 to go pick up the kids and then logged in later? I mean, it's the results at the end of the day. And quite frankly, a lot of candidates want to be contacted outside of hours because it's too hard to work during work hours, to talk during work hours.
It's true.
So it's just a matter of meeting the market and also being a little bit conscious of attracting and retaining the right people.
Absolutely. What are you most passionate about, Jason? Could be as a human or as a recruiter. What are your passions?
Well, usually it's a screensaver will give it away. It's my puppy dog, Bruno.
Hello. What's your dog's name?
Bruno is a 9-year-old cavoodle. My kids joke that he's my favourite. Truth be told, he probably is, because whenever I come home, no matter what happens, he always greets me and comes up and gives me a bit of attention while everyone else is probably on their devices. So, no, I'm very passionate about that. I'm very passionate about the industry. So I have been in recruitment now for 26 years, had my own business for 25, and spent the majority of that time volunteering. So at the moment, the peak industry body is the RCSA, where I met you at a function, Eden, and I sit on the national board for the RCSA, which is a real honour to have been elected to that. And prior to that, I was the chair of the New South Wales Council for many years. And I'm also involved in an international recruitment network called NPA Worldwide, which is basically 500 recruitment companies that collaborate. So, for example, if you rang me up and said you needed an IT person or a sales and marketing person, well, I don't do any of that. I do lawyers. But I could introduce you to 2 or 3 good people who I know, like, and trust, and then you'll be looked after that way. So with the NPA, I volunteered and I became the Australian rep on the board. And then I became the secretary treasurer and then the chair-elect. And then I was actually the chairman of the global board for 2 years. Those 2 years meant that during that time I could choose where all the conferences were and where all the board meetings were, and choose some wonderful junkets. So I took office in March 2020 and stepped down in March 2022, which was not great timing given COVID. But I did send out a survey to everyone saying, where would you like the next conference to be? A, your lounge room, B, your kitchen, C, your dining room.
Yeah.
So,
like that.
Yeah, it's not great. In fact, my heart bleeds because I spent a lot of time in New Orleans, and that's where I was elected chairman, and there was a tragedy there overnight, which is really sad. So hearts and minds go out to all those people that were affected there.
Absolutely. Well, we're at the end of our Chinwag, Jason. It's been so great to catch up, but I just have one more question for you. So for anyone out there that is working in recruitment, anyone that might be considering a career in recruitment, or even someone that maybe is working in recruitment and considering going out on their own, what would your final piece of advice be?
Yeah, I think don't do it for the money. If you follow the money, you always end up in danger. You'll make bad decisions and they'll bite you on the bum, particularly when you give guarantee periods, because people will be found out. You know, if you shortcut things like reference checks or anything, you will always be found out. So play with a straight bat. Do the right thing by candidates, do the right thing by clients, and everything else will sort itself out. But the most important lesson I would have is recruiters need to collaborate more. Having a candidate that can't fill a job or a job where you can't find a candidate is useless. You're always better off with half a loaf than none. So I would say most, but I'd say 20% of our work is referred by other agencies. So think about who might be somebody that can do the job better than you and refer it on. Get experts to help out. Now, internal recruiters do such a fantastic job, but every now and again there's a niche that's really hard to infiltrate. So you could whack an ad on for 37 jobs and get 36 filled on Seek or LinkedIn or whatever it is. The one you won't get filled is your legal job. So Seek run this thing every now and again where they put the top 20 hardest jobs to fill across all industries, white collar, blue collar, everything. Consistently, 10 out of the top 20 hardest to fill jobs are for lawyers.
Yeah.
So we built databases, we go out and network, we go to functions, we sponsor things, we speak to lawyers every day, and that puts us, and we've got 25 years of people on our job out of records. That helps us do it. But trying to do it by yourself, give it a whirl, save the fees, I get it. But if you do get stuck, don't keep persevering because, you know, you'll end up kissing a lot of frogs and never finding your prince.
Yeah. And it leads to burnout, you know. And I've been a martyr over the years where I've got to fill this role. I've got to do it myself. It's a personal goal that I've set for myself. I've got to fill it, but you've just got to let go. And I think that's really great advice. And, you know, our agency partners, and I'm very passionate about it, they are gold, right? Like you need to have those strong relationships. And this is why I love participating in as much as I can through RCSA, etc., and why I was thrilled to catch up with you and meet so many other wonderful agency recruiters at that conference, because I need you, right? Yeah. There are times that I need you. And, you know, it's not a one-way relationship. It's collaboration. And I received so much insight and so much data from my friends in recruitment agency versus my friends that are in internal. You know, the richness of that insight that I can't find myself is gold. So we need to collaborate. We need to be one industry, and Rubber Band is a really great example of, you know, how I'm trying to bring that forward. So thank you so much for catching up with me today, Jason. We could talk for another half an hour, another hour, another day. But we better.
I just want to thank you for, firstly, everything that that Movember does with men's health. But, you know, it's been something that's very close to my heart, so I really appreciate everything your organisation does. But also what you do with Rubber Band and creating community is great, and so hats off to you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for your support, Jason. It's been so great to catch up, and I'm thrilled that you were my first guest for 2025. I couldn't have chosen a better one. You're an absolute champion.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everyone. Take care.
Bye.